Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Pittsburgh Current podcast. I am current publisher editor Charlie Deitch. Today's Pittsburgh Current podcast is brought to you by A&R Solutions. A&R Solutions is now accepting new patients with addiction to heroin or other pain medications. We have a great guest for you today. Sorry, I'm actually very prepared today, which means this is gonna be a little choppy, folks. We have a great guest today, Bethany Hallam. She's a Democrat running for Allegheny County Council, and she's got a great story to tell us. Talk about her ascent into politics and how she got there after her descent into opioid addiction, a 10-year battle that we're going to talk about, and she's kind of made something she's not hiding from this campaign. Also, you can check out issue 4 is now on the streets of the Pittsburgh Current. We've got a great story about 5 black women mayors of Western Pennsylvania by Bethany Rue. It's a great story. You need to check that out. And then we've got a ton of great arts coverage this week, from a new play at Bare Bones Production to the ongoing Black Bottom Film Festival. And also, if you're into indie folk, I have a story this week on Ryan Hoffman and the Pioneers. But as I said, today the Current podcast is brought to you by A&R Solutions. Are you or a loved one battling with drug addiction? You're not alone. A&R Solutions is now accepting new patients with addiction to heroin or other pain medication. A&R Solutions believe that addiction to prescription pain meds and heroin can be treated successfully. A&R treats drug addiction the same as any other disease, with compassion, individualized plans, and evidence-based treatment. They realize that no two people are the same, so substance abuse treatment services are tailored to meet a client's specific needs. As the leading prescriber in Eastern Pennsylvania for Suboxone and Subutex, A&R Solutions offer a full spectrum of treatments. A&R's goal is to treat the ever-growing drug dependence issue throughout our country. With nearly 15 years of experience, A&R Solutions is trying to impact the lives of thousands of people. A&R Solutions can help you face your problems, realize your strengths, and help you be free from addiction. For an appointment, call 1-800-817-4053 or visit our website at andarsolutions.com, and you can also look for the link in the description of this podcast. So, I love Bethany Hallam's story. I know it, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to sort of go through it, and we're going to get through as much of it as we can, because there's a lot. Bethany, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So it's kind of tough to decide, as I was kind of going over the notes and deciding what to talk about first. It's let's talk a little bit first about, as I talked about at the top, you had a 10-year battle with drug addiction, yes, and now here you are running for Allegheny County Council. She's running for the county council at large seat against Democratic incumbent John DeFazio, who has been in that seat since county government started. I think I was there the day he was sworn in, actually. So it's been a long time. So Bethany, talk to me a little bit about what sort of drives your political tendencies.
So I really think that the biggest issue is that I'm coming into this race with a perspective that no one else on county council has, right? So you mentioned my battle with addiction. As a result, I accumulated a few criminal charges. I was incarcerated for a few months. And it just gave me all the more motivation that if I don't stand up and speak for the people that I have been seeing being oppressed for so long, who is going to do it?
Right. And so was that sort of when you were in recovery that you thought about political aspirations, or was it before that, and then maybe once you got clean it sort of, came to the fore for you?
Yeah, so it was long before that. I mean, ever since I was a kid,
right,
student council, the whole works. It's always been a passion of mine. Mm-hmm. And so I actually, when I first got involved with the Democratic Committee, because I'm a committee member from Ross Township, I was still in my active addiction, okay? And so then everything kind of spiraled out of control very quickly. And when I got clean, I took all that energy that I was using to get high every day, and put it into something positive. And politics was just the obvious answer for me, because it was something that I'd always had a passion about, and something that I realized, like, I can go out and I can say whatever I want to who's ever going to listen. But unless I am willing to step up and run for office where I can actually affect the change that I want to see, it's not going to have the impact,
Exactly. And so we're going to talk about Bethany's story. We're going to take the long road. But first I want to say that just before we came on, she told me that Tuesday will mark her anniversary of 2.5 years clean.
Yes.
And I want to congratulate you on
Thank
that.
you very
that's
much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So you first became addicted to opioids. It was prescription pain medications, correct? You were injured, a lacrosse player?
Yes, varsity lacrosse.
In high school. And so talk about you were injured. Talk a little about the injury, and then sort of talk about how the first exposure to opioids sort of hit you.
Right. So it was my junior year in high school. And like I said, varsity lacrosse player. I was always an athlete. Like, that's just who I am. I was a swimmer my whole life, lacrosse player. That was what my life revolved around. And so one day, it was in practice, not even in a game. I always say, like, I wish I was doing something like crazy when it happened. We were just having a regular lacrosse practice, and my foot got stuck. And my knee didn't. My knee kept going. Right. And so I ended up tearing my ACL and my meniscus in my left leg. And so, you know, did the routine, went to the hospital, got prescribed pain pills. A few days later, went to the doctor, got pain pills, scheduled a surgery. Had the surgery, more pain pills.
Right.
After the surgery, physical therapy, more pain pills. And it wasn't even like I was seeking them. It was just, are you in pain? Well, yeah, I'm in pain. Okay, well, here's some pain pills. And I was 16, right?
Yeah.
I truly, I mean, all the DARE classes you get in high school, I knew about drugs, but to me, this is my doctor.
Right, it's medicine. Right?
Exactly. And so that continued on, physical therapy, more prescriptions. And then it was about 7.5 months later, we're now my senior year in high school, I tore my right ACL meniscus.
Wow.
So the same exact injury, the opposite leg, same process all over again. Refills and refills and refills of opioids. And at the time still, I had no idea what was going on. My parents knew I was being prescribed them. And again, they thought the same thing. You know, they were watching how I was taking them. They were given from a doctor. So what do we have to worry about?
Yeah.
And by the time that the refills from that injury finally ended, I mean, I just felt like crap, and I didn't know what it was. Every day I just was like, ooh, why do I feel like this? I didn't feel like myself. And that's when a friend suggested to me, oh, well, I know why you feel that way, because you were on these opioids for so long and now you're not. And so he gave me some. And so that just led to, I mean, 10 years of just a roller coaster ride, you know, almost losing everything.
Right.
And
so I was saying, so what year are we talking about? Because we were talking earlier again too about how really, I mean, I'm sure anybody out there can relate to the fact if you went for dental work, if you went for any sort of pain, I mean, there was a time that you were given these drugs just as easily as you were told to use Advil or anything else. So so what years are we talking about?
So 2006 was my first injury, and my addiction lasted until 2016.
Okay. And so at what point, at the point that the drugs drop out, you no longer have legal means to get them, or at least for those injuries. So how did it progress from there? You said a friend gave you some, and then did that, if you can, explain a little bit sort of how it sort of progressed into this long battle with addiction?
Right. So, I mean, pills were everywhere. It was so, like, I guess I never realized before because I had never been looking for them. But once I was in that position, I realized how easy they were to get. There was a friend just offering me a prescription that he had found in his house. And we were at this time 17 years old, and there was just opioid prescriptions laying around his house. And so that's what we were doing. And then it turns into, you know, who can find them for you? Then I'm seeking them out. And after a few more years, it was, I mean, you know about the healthcare crisis that we have going on. So there was a lot of instances where it was little old ladies, cancer patients, or they were prescribed these Oxycontin and other things for whatever reason, and they couldn't afford their prescription. So to us, knowing how expensive it was to buy these pills, we would have some little old lady where we would buy her prescription for her in exchange for half of her pills. Wow. So she gets more than she could have had before, and we fueled our addiction. I mean,
how old are you at that point?
When that started, 19, I was in college.
Okay, so you're still relatively young, and you've now figured out how you have to game the system to get these drugs. And it's you know, it wasn't like you saw it. I mean, it's just a natural. When you take these drugs, you get addicted. I mean, it wasn't like you sought to get high. It just you became addicted because you used them not sporadically, heavily at 2 points in a couple of years, and then probably in between injuries too, you were probably still taking them because it's
and they were there, and I had them, and it was It wasn't ever about getting high. It was just about feeling normal. So after a while, by the time the prescriptions were over, like I said, I felt horrible and I needed them to just feel normal, you know, to get through my everyday. So very quickly, and I don't even know the exact timeline on it, but at some point in college, I needed to use before I woke up, as soon as I woke up, use before I went to class, use to go to work so that I could make money to get off work and go buy more and use more. It was just my whole entire life for so long. And I just didn't care about anyone else, anything else. It was just me and my addiction. And I was just trapped in it.
I find it one thing, and again, as I was reading your bio and I asked you the timeline earlier, I can't believe that you graduated from Duquesne University while in the throes of this.
I
That's
wonder
amazing.
All the time
like, how did you do that? Do you think? I mean,
so I also worked full time the whole time I was in college. You know, so I think it was just that I'm a very high energy person, right? So I'm always like, go, go, go. So, and the pills were what kept me going. So as long as I had the drugs, I could keep going. So I would go to class, I would get done with class, go straight to work all night, and then start all over again because I had this fuel inside of me that I felt like I couldn't do it without. Right.
And at what point is it easy up to a point to get these drugs? Again, you start talking about working with older folks who can't afford their prescriptions, and you're so I mean, and that's not, I wouldn't think that's an easy way to get drugs, but at least it's a system of some kind. Was there a point where sort of the faucet was turned off on getting these kinds of things, or it was harder to get these kinds of things?
No, because I think I hate to use the word coalition, but like a coalition of addicts, right? We had all these resources amongst, so like you would meet this person, and this person, and and between the group of us, we all always knew somewhere to get them. So we would it was like a team. We would go together and get drugs together. Wow. And that was, I mean, all of my whole college experience, that's what that consisted of. And if I had to miss class to go get the drugs I needed, I missed class to go get the drugs I needed, you know, but I always had to go to work because I knew that was my money source, and that's how I kept fueling my addiction.
How would you say that you reacted during this time? I mean, obviously you act differently, but like just your mood or how you interact with people. How were you changing?
Oh, I wasn't myself. I wasn't myself. But yet at the same time, my struggles with addiction really helped shape who I am today, because I'm able to look back and, you know, people of course ask me all the time, like, do you ever think about using? Does it ever cross your mind nowadays? The only thing I remember about that time is how horrible my life was, how my family hated me, how none of my friends wanted to be around me, how even, you know, I was jumping from job to job to job. I just wasn't someone that anybody wanted anything to do with. And I look back and I think about living in a car for months, about having to sneak into my own parents' house at night because I wasn't welcome there. And I think about all the horrible things and just how much better my life is today. I mean, I told you that when I walked in. I'm just so happy today. And I've really, really taken all that energy that I used in my years of addiction and just focused it onto what I see important today.
So how did you eventually come to the realization that, I mean, I'm sure you probably hit it a couple times, but eventually it hit. You said, I got to get clean, and you got clean. So what was I know that you were arrested a few times with some misdemeanors. What was sort of the moment for you that you decided it had to happen?
So I had been to multiple rehabs. I mean, I come from a really great family, and they were always like, you know, we're sending you to rehab. We're going to fix this. And time again, nothing was fixing it because I wasn't ready. So I had gotten in trouble multiple times, you know, some summary offenses, a couple misdemeanor convictions, and it didn't hit me until I was on probation for one of those misdemeanor offenses, and I violated my probation because I was still using. I failed a drug test, and I ended up in the county jail. And that was the first time I'd been in the county jail, you know, like overnight for different instances before, but never stuck there with, when you're there on a probation violation, you have a detainer. There is no chance to get bailed out. I don't care if you have all the money in the world. You are stuck in that county jail indefinitely. You're literally at the will of your probation officer and the courts. And so just kind of knowing that here I am, I'm helpless. And looking at myself in the mirror every day and being like, this is not who you are. You have so much drive and so much dedication in everything you do. Why are you using it to this? And it was the first time, in 10 years that I had ever had a clean mind. First time, because I'm sitting in jail. And I think it was just a wake-up call, and I was ready to do more with my life.
What is it like to I know obviously the reality is that there are drugs in jail, in prison. You can get drugs, but what was that like? I assume that's when you made your decision. That's when you had to kick. Is that, or are you doing that? I mean, there's no program. Is there a program? You just kind of go cold turkey at that point because you're inside for 5 months, 6 months in that range. Something like that?
So I was in between there and the Renewal Center, which is a Department of Corrections attached to the jail, 5.5 months.
Wow.
Yes. So I was sick.
Yeah.
So the way it works is when you go to the county jail, unless you are coming in and you are detoxing from benzos or alcohol, there is no treatment. There's no medication to detox you.
Right.
And that's because you can die from withdrawal from benzos and alcohol.
Right.
Okay. So I was just sick. And when I say a month and a half, 2 months, I mean like the worst flu you've ever had for a very long time, because I had never detoxed before. Even when I had gone to rehab in the past, everyone was using in rehab, right? I had never really been clean, and it was horrible. And the crazy part was that I looked around the pod that I was on, and almost every single person was there for drug offenses. Almost every single person was there for violating their probation by failing a drug test or being caught with drugs or paraphernalia or something of the sort. And I think I had never really seen it like that before, you know? And there's drugs around. If you want to get drugs in jail, there's drugs to be had. But it was just all I felt. I didn't want to move. I laid in my cell. I mean, there was the first few weeks, I didn't even come out to the common areas. I just laid in my cell. I was sick. I was miserable. I'd call my family, and that was it. And I really think that's what I was at, rock bottom.
Right.
And all I could think of is I finally have a clear mind. I need to do something good with this, and I can't waste this opportunity. So that's what I did.
That's great. And so that obviously that leads you to, again, you said you had an interest in politics from a young age, but now you're experiencing the county's penal system, which is, for those of you that don't know, I can just simply sum up to say that the Allegheny County Jail has been a problematic place for a long time, between emadequate medical care to a high rate of deaths while in custody. Suicides, correct. Yeah, it's there's a lot of so that's one of your platforms for running for Allegheny County Council. So we'll get into the particulars of, you know, your running and so forth. But let's while we're on that subject, let's talk a little bit about that. So what can you do as an Allegheny County councilor? What is your plan to sort of address some of these issues with not just, you know, I don't know how much a county councilor can deal with mass incarceration, but how much as far as the conditions at the jail? What kind of things are you?
Right. So county council approves the budget, right? And county council there is a jail oversight board that the president of county council, my opponent, sits on. So there is, I think that really what the solution is kind of to use the office as a platform for change. Right. So who else has a perspective on county council as to what is going on in the jail than someone who's been there? Because I can tell you that no one else on county council has ever been sitting inside the county jail that they are the oversight for. Right. So I have seen things. The number one thing that I always talk about is the drugs being brought into the jail. It is a very secure facility. How are drugs getting brought in? They're getting brought in by guards. Okay. And then a form of institutional rape, they're being exchanged for favors with inmates. So you have these inmates who are sitting there detoxing, withdrawing, one of the worst experiences of their life. And a corrections officer comes up and says, I can make you feel better. Right. That's the number one thing that I saw more than I'd seen it in movies. I never realized it was real until I was there. I saw suicides, right? Attempted suicides happen and they're not reported. You hear sometimes when there's a suicide that takes place, but attempted suicides are so frequent. No one is being treated properly. There isn't mental health treatment in the jail, and there is no funding in this state for mental health treatment. We're closing facilities instead of opening facilities. At the high point of our opioid epidemic, we are closing mental health facilities. And so many people don't have insurance. I mean, there are people sitting in jail waiting for a bed in a treatment facility. So we're spending over $100 per person per day to hold them in the county jail just because there's not a bed for us to send them to. How does that make any sense at all? Then there's the other situations like the trans community and how trans inmates are treated in the county jail. So there are trans women being housed with men, being physically and sexually assaulted on a daily basis. and no one's standing up for them. And so if nothing else, I want to give a voice to the people who feel like they don't have a voice. For so long, they felt like no one cared what they have to say. Well, I've been there, sitting there, seeing these injustices, and I want to help change that.
Right. Getting back to what you talked about drugs being brought in, exchange for sex. So this happens in the open. I mean, this isn't something that's necessarily being hidden, correct? I mean, I assume it's because there's that power of, you're an inmate, there's a guard. I mean, who's gonna believe you over a guard anyway?
Right. What am I going to do? Go report that a guard offered me drugs? They're going to be like, okay, you're a criminal. I don't believe you.
So it seems to me that this is happening, maybe not just like right out in the open, but it seems to me that it's obvious that it's going on, and there's still nothing done about it.
Yes. And too much, too often.
Right.
Because you're going to be putting people in that jail for offenses that are being committed by the guards who are overseeing them in jail.
Right.
How does that make any sense? How is that fair? How is that just? How are we not talking about this more?
And you talked a little bit about LGBTQ rights. You recently you made a call on your opponent to pledge to ban conversion therapy within Allegheny County.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
So there's a questionnaire for an endorsement, the Stonewall Dems endorsement that is coming up. And one of the answers was that he wants to institute conversion therapy ban on the countywide level. So now this is legislation that passed easily in the city. Why haven't we had this already? If this is something you wanted to do and you've had this position to do this for so long, let's do it.
Yeah, you're the president of council. It's you've got influence and sway there.
Exactly. So there's a county council meeting coming up on March 5th, and I'd like to see the legislation introduced then.
Great. So let's sort of back it up and slow it down. And I will say, as I look at the clock, that this is the Pittsburgh Current Podcast. And we are sponsored today by A&R Solutions. If you have an issue with addiction, you can give them a call at 1-800-817-4053. That's 800-817-4053. A&RSolutions.com. And you can find those numbers and links in the description for this podcast. So let me ask you generally before we get into some more of your specifics. Allegheny County Council has been accused, I may have been wanting to do it from time to time, of not really of more of being a rubber stamp board. Is that something that obviously you believe? I mean, there's not much new legislation, if any new legislation. I don't believe there's any that comes out of the Allegheny County Council. Everything is generated in the county executive's office, and then council is there to be that approval. Just there to be a check and a balance, but I don't know that we're getting that.
So the wording of the Home Rule Charter, which established county council, says that county council's purpose is to be the legislative branch of our county, not a rubber stamp for the executive branch. They are to be the checks and balances for the executive branch. So if for so long it's just whatever the county executive says goes, how are they doing what they're designed to do? And so I truly believe that there are a lot of great allies on county council right now. And I am not shy. I will speak up for what is right. I will speak up for the people, again, who don't have the voice to do so. Right. And I know that there is good people on council who will back that up. And I want to be there to back them up and give them a voice if they feel like they currently can't speak up against what's going on.
Do you feel more empowered running this year after sort of the influx of women we saw go into elected office last year? And I hate to bring up and say, how does it feel to be a woman running for office? Because again, it sucks that we even asked that question, but it
feels fantastic. You can ask me that question. It feels fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's great. So did that embolden you some to not only, because you're not only getting in a political race, you're taking on a 20-year incumbent. Now, listen, there were a lot of longtime incumbents who saw their reigns come to an end last year. So did that help sort of embolden you a little bit to say, I can do this?
Oh, definitely. working. So I've always helped out on campaigns, right? Door knocking, canvassing, petition signatures. So I've always been involved, at least for the last 5 or so years, in helping other candidates, young Democrats, strong women, outspoken candidates who I saw were the best people for the job.
Right.
And so, like I said, I realized a long time ago that the way to affect change is to get the proper candidates into the offices that have the power to affect the change. And so seeing young women, I mean, Sarah, Summer, Lindsay,
right.
just in Allegheny County alone,
right.
who really energized people
right.
who had never, there were so many people who came out to vote for those women who have never voted before,
right.
who didn't even know what day election day was,
right.
who had never seen a candidate that had empowered them
right.
to feel like their vote mattered.
Yeah.
And how could that, I mean, I got goosebumps right now telling you about it, because it really just was this feeling that I can't explain, seeing that, wow, people are looking for someone to represent them. And when we're talking about new school versus old school, there is a lot more new school in this county than there is old school.
Yeah.
So if we keep that momentum going, where people who aren't super voters, who aren't historically voting in every single election, if we can keep them coming out and voting in
right.
every single election, we can change the entire landscape of this county.
Right.
We can really affect that change. And so, I mean, there's no question that that was one of the major things that inspired me to do what I'm doing right now.
Right. And I think one of the biggest hurdles that we have in the Allegheny County system is the power of the Democratic Party endorsement over the past several decades now. There have been a lot of notable, this are the ones we talked about last year. When Bruce Krause first won city council, he wasn't endorsed. I mean, you've got Bill Peduto wasn't endorsed for mayor, at one point. And so you've got a lot of folks though who kind of hang their success on getting that endorsement. And now you're seeking the endorsement. Is that correct? I
am, of course. I'm a county committee person, a state committee person. I respect the endorsement process. And I realize that, because one of the things you get asked, I've been going around all the different committees, right? So this is a big county, as I'm sure you know. So every night we were bouncing from every corner of the county to make sure that we get to talk to all of the committee people right now. And that's something that is a question that they ask. Are you going to run without the endorsement?
Right.
It's the last question before you leave every single place you go. And I think what's important is that, how can you expect me to answer that right now?
Right.
How can you expect me to have a decision on something when we're not there yet? This is a campaign that I'm running day by day, not endorsement by non-endorsement, And I have such a huge team of supporters, of people who are donating their time, their money, their knowledge to this campaign. How can I start going out and saying what I'm going to do with the endorsement without consulting those people who have had faith in me, who have really supported me against what may have been the status quo? Right. So I think that's the big issue here, but I'm ready for the endorsement vote. I can promise you that I am working with every ounce of everything that I have, because that's important.
We will be there that day, because it's it's always an interesting it's always an interesting
it's like the Grammys. Day out, right? It's the Grammys for Allegheny County politics. That's what I say.
Exactly. I didn't get a swag bag though, so maybe those guys can hook that up.
I'll get you a swag bag.
Thank you.
All right.
But I feel like that's a question that they ask candidates, and again, I'm talking about longtime Dems, entrenched entrenched committee people. That's a question they ask the person that they don't expect is going to get the endorsement. I could be wrong, but I doubt there are any, if many times at all during this campaign that John DeFazio has been asked, John, are you going to run if you don't get the party endorsement?
I would like to hear his answer for that.
Yeah. John, are you going to run if you don't get the party endorsement? Let us know. Let somebody know. I think that's an interesting question, because again, when you for so long, it's not a fix per se, but there's just a way that people go about things, and they get comfortable. And I think that's what the elections showed us last year, is you can't get comfortable, because eventually things do change.
And some young, strong woman will come and take your place.
Exactly. Yes. and you will disregard that. And I'm not saying this about John at all. I'm talking about
just
some
in
things
general.
that happened in general, and some things that happened last year. They were, some of these candidates were disregarded. They were, they didn't feel that they had to really get in a room with them and sit down and face them and go to a candidate forum and talk about your positions sort of head to head, and so people could see. And I think honestly, I think that aside from the fact that there were some great campaigns run, that was one of the things that sunk these guys too, is that they refused to address the challenge because I think they thought it was in the bag, and I think they realized it too late that things were going south on them. So do you plan on? Has there been any talks yet about doing any head-to-head sort of candidate nights or debates or anything like that?
There's a lot of different organizations that do them. So different community groups, League of Women Voters, people who have reached out to me. But the problem is that both candidates have to accept in order for it to happen. It needs to be, fair, and it needs to be where this is a democracy, right? So it has to be both parties who are participating in it for it to happen.
Okay, so the hope is there.
The hope is there. And I the more people that I can get my message out to, that's the way to do this. Talking to everyone. The one thing I'm going to do is listen to every single person's opinion, what matters to them, what are the issues, because when you go to the North Hills and then you go to the city and then you go out to the West Side and you go out to the East End, there are different problems in every area. So you can't go around saying the same things to all these different groups of people. You need to be able to go and hear their concerns personally and learn how you can help them, because that's what this is about. It's about listening. It's not just me going out talking. It's about listening to what's important. And you could live,
you could live in other, I think some people don't think this. You can cross a bridge. You can take a tunnel.
You can.
You can find out what's going on. And you should find out what's going on in the entire county and other neighborhoods and so forth. I'm a North Hills person like yourself. And so, but I probably know more about city politics than I do what's going on in my own community, And so I think you have to make yourself available to learn the issues from different sectors to be able to do your job. That works for me. And I would think for a county council person, it has to be. You have to know the issues, not just where you're comfortable, but also the places where maybe you don't have as much knowledge. You have to go out and get it.
So that's a big thing that I've been. So transparency is one of my big issues, especially as I'm sure you know about the Sunshine Act violations that have taken place in county council over the past years. How can transparency not be something that we're talking about right now? I give out my cell phone number to anybody who asks for it on this campaign trail. If you want a direct line of communication with me because you think that that's what's going to help you and your community, please call me. Let me know what I can be talking about on my platform that is most important to you. Facebook, social media in this day and age. If you're not using social media for your campaign, you're doing it wrong, because the reach of social media is so underestimated. And I'm a millennial, right? So I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
What are your social tags? What are your...
Oh, so Twitter, Bethany Hallam, Instagram, Bethany Hallam 412, and Facebook, Bethany Hallam.
Wow.
Keeping it simple.
That's a great idea. I should do that for myself. Not Bethany Hallam, but
you can,
my own name. Yeah, whatever. Maybe Bethany Hallam 2 is where you'll find me. But transparency is something, because I think every one of your issues dovetails under that umbrella of transparency.
Yes.
If you go to Bethany's website, you'll see her very long, detailed thoughts on fracking. Actually, under fracking, she just has the word no, and which I think so I read your platform and I get down to fracking. No, I'm like that. I mean, that. How else can you say it? That's the best. That's the best way to say it. But fracking is one of those things that land deals were being made, deals to Lease County land had been made, and there was trouble seeing those documents. I mean, those documents were not made readily available to the public. We didn't know what kind of deal they were getting into, because county council gave that power to the executive. So talk a little bit about and again, environment, gun, all this stuff sort of goes under that transparency thing that you talk about. So talk a little bit about that, and talk a little bit about your thoughts on the environment and on fracking and so forth.
So I think the one big point here is that this is the only environment we get. There is no do-over. There's no plan B environment. If we don't take care of the environment we have right now, we're done. There's going to be nothing left for future generations to come. So instead of doing what prior generations before us have done and just like, oh, well, we don't need to worry about it right now because it's not our problem. It's not going to affect us. We need to worry about this right now. There are so many statistics coming out that's saying if we don't, within the next 5-10 years, majorly change what we are doing, not just in this county, not just in this state, in our entire world, we are not going to have an environment that is sustainable for any longer. So the big thing is the air. I mean, if anyone gets the alerts on their phone like I do, it seems like almost every single day this year alone, we're getting alerts saying, oh, you know, poor air quality day. Okay, there's people in the Mon Valley who were going outside with their children, their families, people with asthma every single day. And then they get an alert that says, oh, hey, by the way, for the past at least 2 weeks, the air has literally been unsafe for you to breathe. Right. So don't go outside. Don't go outside. Sorry that you've been out in it for the past 2 weeks. Yeah. Don't go outside now. Like, come on. Yeah. It is 2019, and we have air that is unsafe. We have lead in our water. Lead levels comparable to Flint, Michigan, which everyone knows about. But let's talk about Pittsburgh, and let's talk about that our water is undrinkable too. Yeah. And I think the biggest problem is it always seems to be, you know, minority communities who are being affected by this the worst, because they can't go out and afford a couple $1,000 water filter to put on their spigots in their house. You know, they can't afford to not have to go out and walk to the store or to the bus stop. So that's the thing is this just another issue like the drug epidemic that we have going on now, where that's been going on in other communities for a long time. And then suddenly it's, you know, middle to upper class white kids, and now you're talking about it. This has been an issue that has been going on forever, just like the issues with our air and our water. And so now finally everybody's going to pay attention. No, we need to make sure these things are being talked about every single day. There is no end in sight. Let's talk about and let's figure out how we can remedy the solution. Right. And
even today, it's tough to get everyone to agree that, oh yeah, there's a problem, you know, because apparently environmental science some people don't think that's the real science. You spoke a little bit about how underserved communities, how poorer communities rather, usually end up underserved in these situations. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was transit access. I mean, that's when back when Port Authority was hacking routes. I mean, it was mostly, it happened in poor communities first. It happened in, you know, these underserved communities already becoming more underserved. So what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on fixing?
So I don't drive. All right. So one of the other, you know, consequences of my addiction is I lost my license. So next year is the year after almost a decade of not having a driver's license. Wow. And so I see this firsthand, and I live 10, 12 minutes north of the city. I cannot get a bus from my house. Right. There is no transportation. There's no public transit. I could take an Uber to a bus stop, you know, 10 minutes away and then get a bus into town. But doesn't that defeat the purpose? You know, I mean, thankfully there is Uber now. When I first lost my license, Uber wasn't around yet, you know, so thankfully we have that. But for example, I work somewhere that is within walking distance of my house, because how do I get to work every day? Right. You know, so it really, people are limited because these transportation is getting cut off to everyone, and it is minority communities are being affected the most. But look around our county. Like I would really like to know how many people can walk a reasonable distance to get a bus and then get anywhere. Right. So again, if you have a lot of money to throw around, I guess Uber is a solution. But think about it, if I was Ubering to and from work every day, it wouldn't even be worth it for me to go to work. Right. I would spend so much money on just the Uber that why do I even have a job? So it's just so many people, again, who feel like nobody is standing up for them and they feel left out of the conversation. I think that's the biggest issue here, is that there's so many people in this county who feel like nobody's coming out and talking to them. Nobody's asking them how these transit cuts are affecting them, how the opioid epidemic is affecting them, how the dirty air and dirty water is affecting them. And so that's the biggest part, I think, of this campaign, is to make sure that everyone feels heard. Right.
We are talking to Bethany Hallam, where we're going to be wrapping up with Bethany Hallam, candidate for Allegheny County Council at large for the Democratic nomination, taking on 20-year incumbent Johnny DeFazio. Sorry, I always want to call him Jumpin' John DeFazio. And today, the Pittsburgh Current podcast is brought to you by A&R Solutions. Bethany, just sort of to wrap up here, let's talk a little bit about just obviously the main goal is to get elected and to help folks. But what else are you learning out there as you're talking to people and as you're campaigning? What else are you getting out of this besides the opportunity to hopefully have a chance to run for this seat?
So I think the first thing is, like I've said many times, meeting so many people in every different community in the entire county and hearing how different each neighborhood is. Yeah. The other thing, politics are dirty. Some people play dirty in this game. And I think what's important is just always being myself. Yeah. That is the number one thing in this campaign, is to not conform to what I may have been told to do, to take advice from everywhere, but to pick and choose what I apply. Sure. Because in the end, this is my name that I stand for lots of things. And if I don't always stay true to myself, then how can I expect anyone to vote for me?
Did you, was there a time when you started this campaign, was there ever a question to you that maybe you would try to either downplay or not talk about your addiction? Again, these are things in this world, especially. I mean, not that I mean, things don't stay quiet at all, but I don't get that. I don't think that just talking to you and from what I've read about you, I don't think that was any part of the reason behind that. But was there any part of you that was a little worried about coming out and speaking so publicly about this?
Yeah, so I went into this knowing that, 10 years of my life, I battled addiction. I'm 29 years old. That is a major chunk of my life. Yeah. How can I go out and talk about myself and talk about what I stand for and talk about my platform without talking about something that was such a huge part of my life? So the addiction is who I was. It's not who I am today, right, but it really shaped my perspective. Experiences shape perspective, and perspective is what you use to affect change. Right. And so I knew that if I didn't come out as who I am, as truly and authentically as possible from the very beginning, that I was wasting my time and everyone else's time. So this was very important to me, to just be myself, tell my story, speak my truth. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm looking for out of a candidate. So how can I expect that from someone else if I'm not willing to be it myself?
Absolutely. Yeah. Bethany, thank you so much for taking all the time. I have 6,000 more questions, but we're a little late as it is. You can find out more about Bethany's campaign at www.bethanyhallam.com, at Bethany Hallam on Twitter, Bethany Hallam 412 on Instagram, and Bethany Hallam on Facebook. Yes. Look at that. I see.
It helps you remember it, right?
Yes. And this has been the Pittsburgh Current Podcast, brought to you by A&R Solutions. One show note I do want to say is that this Sunday at 11 a.m., we are going to be starting a new series. We're calling it the Pittsburgh Current Concert Series. And this Sunday, Chasing the Barons will be playing live on our Facebook page. So come and check that out, or it will also be available for download later. We're looking to do this once a month or so. And so if you're a band looking to promote a record or just get your music out there, you can hit me up at charlie@pittsburghcurrent.com, and we'll talk to you about maybe coming on a future edition. And again, this has been the Pittsburgh Current Podcast, sponsored by A&R Solutions. Are you or a loved one battling drug addiction? You're not alone. A&R Solutions is now accepting new patients with addiction to heroin or other pain medication. A&R Solutions believe that addiction to prescription pain medication and heroin can be treated successfully, the same as any other disease, with compassion, individualized plans, and evidence-based treatment. Services are tailored to meet a client's specific needs. A&R Solutions offers a full spectrum of treatments. With nearly 15 years of experience, A&R Solutions is trying to impact the lives of thousands of people. For an appointment, 1-800-817-4053, AndRSolutions.com. Look for the link in the description. Pittsburgh Current Podcast, issue 4 on the streets right now. Check it out. Great stories, and we'll see you next week.